A very warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and lovely audience. Thank you so much for joining us on a Friday afternoon. I promise that this will be a very engaging session as we plan to pack in some really meaningful and impactful takeaways for you within a 35-40 minute capsule. So starting with, and of course, we look forward to your questions and try and answer, as many as we can given the time. So starting with the topic, designing learning experiences in the flow of work. The reason this topic is relevant, I think all of us will resonate with the thought that you look at the two parts to it, in the flow of work and the designing of learning experiences. In the flow of work, as we all know, because boundaries are sort of blurring, on and off time, there's no distinction really, and work is happening anywhere, anytime. And technology further is sort of, making it extremely easy to always operate in an always on kind of environment. In addition to that, the diversity of the workforce, right? We have multi-generational workforce, we have ethnicity, gender, location to take into consideration. All of this adds a very interesting dimension to the planning of learning systems, processes, as well as experiences to cater to the not just present, but future. So digging into the topic, but before we go into the construct of how we want to tackle this topic, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelist. We have with us Govind Srinivasan, who's a global L&D leader at Conduent, very passionate learning leader, comes with very rich and extensive experience in learning strategy, transformation, learning consulting, and has a very keen eye towards technology and how it can completely transform, the learning ecosystem. And we'll hear more from him and his experiences both with IBM and Conduent. We have with us Satish Rajratnam, Senior Vice President HR at Mphasis. He comes with more than 2 decades of global experience and interestingly across multiple industry verticals. Comes with experience and expertise in strategizing and transforming business with human capital strategy. So Satish for us. And I also have with me Anvit Murthy, who is Vice President HR Rapido. He is, an HR leader with global experience in creating business impact through HR processes. Very passionate about high performing and collaborative and engaged talent in organizations. And again, all my interactions will we'll bring that back into insights as we talk further. So what we have with us, we've tried to bring in some diverse.
Thanks for having me, Kiran.
Yes, pleasure having all of you. So for the audience, just wanted to bring the fact that we have diverse industry experience, and even organizations, as you see, are at different stages with very different, business challenges that they are tackling with. And hence you'll find a very good mix of how they are thinking about the learning ecosystem. So let me start by setting the overall context so that we further go into the learning experiences. Businesses are transforming rapidly. And with that, we need to also attune the workforce planning and management strategy. So how are we seeing that happening on ground? So I'll pose that to Satish first. Satish, would love to hear a bit from your end. How are you seeing some, on ground and the experiences you've had there?
Thank you. Thanks for having us here, Kiran. Well, it's I think this needs a 2-day workshop, if you may, for us to kind of go over this. An hour is just going to be a teaser. However, so from my perspective and what we've seen in this organization, whether my current organization or the past, I've been all through and through with IT services, system integration kind of firms that I've worked with, heading learning, heading HR, transformation, and so on and so forth. So the way that we see is it depends on where your organization is right now. What is their point of influx, right? Do they want to, they're all done. Yeah, I think in a side conversation that we just had just before this, it's a stability or sustenance stage that your company is going through. How would you approach this differently? Versus you're in a tremendous growth phase that you're looking at, or building capacity for that matter. how would you then go through this entire enablement, right? For want of a better word, I don't want to qualify it as training or learning or HR and whatever, right? How do you enable talent for an organization? Or the third most, which most of us in this forum today are, is in the fast-paced growth trajectory, right? If you are to grow 1.5, 2x, 3x, post-pandemic, in the hybrid way that we're working right now, then what is the strategy that one should adopt, right? To enable talent to be ready and to get aligned to the business vision, growth, culture, and so on and so forth, right? So it's a good stage of phase that your company is, and accordingly, the way that you think through is also going to change drastically, right? For example, the way that we come in from, we're growing at about 1.5, 2x every quarter. For that, yes, there has to be a steady capacity build that has to happen, because I need to kind of keep going, let the customers know, yes, we have the capacity to kind of help solution the problem statement that you have from an IT perspective. That is one. However, for me to just build capacity is just a buy, right? Over a point in time, you can't just keep buying all through. I need to also think about future. For us to grow 2x or 3x, it's not just here and now, but I need to kind of supplement that with saying, apart from where we are today, because in Mphasis, we work as tribes, right? We have 7 different tribes catering to different tech archetype, if I want to put it for a better word, right? Now, if I have to diverge into another tribe or another tech capability, I need to start building that capability here and now, right? I don't want to leave it to the end where it hits in, let's say, quantum, for example, right? People have started talking about quantum. We're already into quantum. We're investing with IITs. We've kind of incubating centers out there and working programs around quantum and so on and so forth. We've started to build now, right? Quantum is going to come in anytime soon, or it's already arrived, right? So likewise, we started off with blockchain much before. We started off with digital transformation much before, and so on, where we are today. So it depends on which phase of the organization that we are at, and accordingly, the change should happen, or the strategy should happen. Like I said, that's where we are. We're in a rapid phase, so we're trying to balance between here and now building capacity versus how do I build capability to cater to future needs of our clientele as well. So it's a very equal balance that I would want to put it. Okay.
Really well said. But I think you still are at a stage where the organization is well established and now growing at 2x. I think with Anvit, there is a very different challenge in Rapido, where they are pretty much growing at a multi-x phase right now, and also building talent. I think at this point in time, even the capacity is being built in. So Anvit, how are you seeing it for you, and what challenges are you looking at?
No, completely agree with Satish. It depends on where we are at, as a company, right? So definitely, like we being a startup, we definitely need to ship our product features as early as possible. We need to do experiments as quickly as possible. We want to give that awesome experience to our customers as early as possible. Now, keeping that in mind, we need to have the talent to build that entire ecosystem for the platform itself. Now, having said that, one is we're growing at a very fast pace, so we need to really get talent from outside as well. But at the same time, most of the startups, they end up actually looking at very short-term plans, right? So we need to grow, but we do not really look at being a company, being a profitable company in the next 4 years or 5 years. We'll figure that out later. That is the kind of mentality as such. In that, somewhere, the focus on learning and development takes a backseat. People do not see the value of it. They do understand it, but are they ready to invest that kind of money? Are they ready to invest that kind of time? Because everybody is in a hurry as an organization. So yeah, when we look at some of these startups, right, it's very important to plan for that, 3 or 4 years down the line. Where will we get the talent, and how are we going to upskill our people? Because we can't keep buying talent at exorbitant cost all the time. Right? So hence that economic value of training development is so important, even when you are at a small scale, because to become a big profitable company, at the end of it, you need to really invest in talent as well.
So, yeah, that's actually what I wanted to do. Take the different stages that we are talking about, and the way the organization, the management and the makeup is in terms of whether to build capacity or capability. That decision itself is driven primarily at this from the stage. And so I'll just take that to the next point, wherein I want to talk about how learning leaders are thinking of whether constructing or reviewing or re-engineering the learning ecosystem to bring in the required agility, because what we really do need is agility at each of these stages. So Govind, would love to hear a little bit from your side, your experiences on that and insights.
Hey, I think, yes, as you said, people are at different journeys. As far as learning is concerned, learning itself is in a different phase today. Some of it accelerated due to COVID, but that's what the direction has been otherwise as well, in terms of learning becoming more digital, multimodal, and taking a shape which is completely oriented towards focusing on the learner, which is why I think it's very interesting to see three words as in the topic that you have, Kiran, here. I think you have learning, experience, and workflow. These are the three interesting words. Of course, designing is important to make sure that all of these happen. But if you look at the word learning itself, although Satish mentioned the word enablement, we used to call ourselves training departments earlier, and now the word that is being used more is learning. Learning, now somebody trains you, but you learn, right? So in the end, it is the onus is on an employee to learn. So and that's a shift that we need to make as learning departments, again in different capacities depending on the organization, but the onus for learning is from the employee. So the employee learns. It's very, very important. Then the word experience. Everybody is talking about experience today, whether in learning or as an employee or as a person consuming anything, whether in retail, online, offline. The word experience becomes very important. As long as people get the experience, they are into it, they consume, whether it is learning or not. So again, it's important to focus on the experience from a learning point of view. And that's what we are moving towards. And the third aspect is the word workflow. I think that is the major shift. So we have moved from traditional learning classroom and even what I would call e-learning as traditional now, or VILT. All of that was kind of, traditional ways of training people up, taking learning, getting the worker to the learning, I would say, right? But now the shift has to be taking learning to work and it as part of the workflow, right? So how do you enable people where they are, meet the learners where they are? And there, I think there are two components to it, meeting them in time and in space. These are two important elements always, everywhere in life, right? In time and space. Now, if you look at space, are you meeting the learner where they are, whether they're office, home, when they're using the system, when they're not using the system, all of that, that is a key element of meeting the learner where that's the space, right? So that you don't draw them out of their space and take them to a place for them to get trained, but you help them learn where they are. So that's very, very important, right? The second aspect is from knowledge. So all of this, while I think in terms of learning, because you were taking people out, you're giving them knowledge. Very true. Knowledge, either even in this session, people are learning, either something new or they are learning something more. But what you really need is to help them support their performance to get them better at their performance. And that's where the word workflow becomes very, very important in terms of helping people in time where they need it most, right? In their journey within the organization, whether a person is a newbie, or whether they are into a new project, or whether they get to some other new project. So how do you then enable them without taking them away from work to supporting them? How do you enable them beyond knowledge to performance? I think that's the learning 3.0 challenge. So learning 2.0, I didn't mention that's more because of all of the learning experience platforms that have coming and people kind of pulling a lot of learning themselves. But if we have to really make learning useful, I think it is to help not only build knowledge, but enable performance in the workflow. So these three words are key to, the new learning landscape is how I would say. So learning landscape is kind of going through changes much faster than before. The first learning point 1.0 took about 20 years, maybe the next one 5 years, this will take probably 2 years. So that's how I'm seeing it happen.
So shortening of the phase itself because of the rapid acceleration of the pace, right? So in fact, what you mentioned is very right, that shifting from looking at learning to just for the sake of learning to actually linking it to performance and skilling part of it, right? So I would want to make that sort of segue that given that workforce itself is very diverse, and you said meeting in space and time, which meant that on one side you have knowledge workforce, you have distributed workforce, which is the sales workforce, you also have the factory workforce, which is the blue collar workforce. Really want to understand how you meeting challenges, again from learning standpoint for in the flow of work for all of these diverse sort of set of workforce. So maybe first I'll ask Anvis to sort of give some thoughts, and Satish would love to hear yours as well.
Yeah, definitely, Kiran. In a good space to answer that, because when we look at Rapido as a company, right, we have operations, we have marketing, then there is an engineering team, product team, the data team. So, but one thing, and also like very energetic young workforce, average age is around 28, 29. Right. One is everybody wants to learn, everybody wants to grow, extremely ambitious young folks in the company. Now, everybody has their own, somewhere they know what kind of career path they would want to do, what is that they want to accomplish at workplace as such. So now for us, actually, like what we do is in terms of training or in terms of learning, I would say, how can we, let us say, how can we ship the product faster? How can we build the feature faster? Right? And how can we add more value to the business? That's where the learning should focus on. Right? And that has been our approach. I mean, that is the way in which we are going to go. And in fact, we have set up 4 academies as well. When we talk about the structure of the L&D as such. One is on technical skills, which completely focuses on engineering, data engineers, data scientists, and product development, and so on and so forth. The other one is on functional, which is very specific to transportation tech, which is very specific to Rapido as such. Right. So that is something which we are in the process of building it. Then comes the behavioral skills academy, which people have these technical skills, but they still need to work as teams. They need to collaborate with one another. So that's where actually that academy comes in and tries to build that collaboration between people as such. Then comes the leadership development academy, because at the end of the day, leaders are the one who show the direction, who show the path. So hence the focus is on that particular academy as well. Yeah, I mean, that's what actually we are doing at Rapido as of now.
And Satish, you want to give us some thoughts around, the diversity of workforce and how learning experiences again need to sort of cater to that, or at least at a broad level, we need to think of it and align with that enablement point that you meant, right? Aligning with the business outcomes that we're looking at.
And so again, I'm gonna. There was one question in the window also came up. I'll see if I can overlap that as well. It is about, I'm going to add on to what Anvi just said. It's about how do you create personas within your learning community, right? Gone are the days where you sit in a corporate office, or you sit in the HR office, let me put it that way, or learning office, and say, look, this is your learning goal. You have to complete 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nobody's here to listen to that, right? Today, the personas are different. Today, the millennials, the Gen Zers are saying, look, I will learn at my own pace. Give me a 1 minute, 2 minute bite-sized module. I just want to know what is blockchain. I just want to know what is cloud. That's about it for now, right? But leave it to me at my own pace. I will learn what is Azure, what is AWS, what is Google Cloud, or whatever it is, what is Metaverse and things like that. So it is about how do you create personas and make sure you kind of create that, for want of better words, how do you incentivize them to kind of turn towards saying, look, I ought to learn this, right? For me to stay relevant in this industry for that matter, right? So your learning channels are modified or bundled into your learners' skill and will as well, right? How do they want to skill themselves up quickly, faster, quicker, versus, look, I don't have the willingness to learn right now, but I can defer this for next quarter or quarter after, but still I'll ensure that I will learn it out, right? So it depends on how much, how soon, how quick you create that characteristics, create personas, and start pushing learning. For example, a campus hire for that matter, right? If you look at it, any mandated training will be done within a week or two. That's what we've observed to a large extent, right? Anybody who's in the 1-2 years in an organization, you tell them, look, for you to grow much faster, complete your learning path, that works wonders. What we've done, an unquote example would be, anybody who's joining our organization, as soon as you join in, our workflow takes in his or her profile into the learning system directly. We have a patented program called Talent Next, right? It's a typical ML-driven, NLP-driven platform. As soon as you log in, from a profile that you had submitted, right, that characteristics, your persona is fed into the Talent Next system. It picks up and saying, look, I'm a Java developer. That would mean there are 2 or 3 ladders that you grow from a learning perspective. It will curate your learning path and say, these are 3 learning paths that you can look at. Which one would you want to choose? I want to become a front-end developer, back-end developer, or I want to move into a module leader and manage a team. What is it that you wanted to do, right? So the machine learning algorithm throws up all these based on his or her experience, skill, proficiency, interest, and aspiration, and so on and so forth. So that creates a persona for us, right? That has worked wonders for us. So that's for the millennials and Gen Zs, right? And the deeper you go, like the tech leads, or let's say in IT world, we call them as Scrum Masters and Agile coaches and so on, your proficiencies swing, right? Your higher degree of proficiency is needed, or competencies that are needed. For you, the learning curation is much more different, right? We bring in outside-in perspective of certifications and things like that. Or we have OEM certifications coming in. You have mentor programs within. You have your enterprise architect coming and saying, look, I will run a session, why don't you guys be a part of, and things like that. So that persona is totally different, right? So it's about how do we create willingness to learn, because that's a major challenge. And one question in the window is also around that. How do you make people learn to learn, right? It is about how do you make it interesting, right? And the way that you make, I had a blue screen coming outside, I had to knock that off. So how do you make a learner learn, right? You have a very close persona created. Look, these are guys who are willing to learn right now. I will start putting them much faster, right? Second, for you to learn, well, it's not going to be, you just learn and just not utilize your skill. How soon you can utilize the skill? Internally in our organization, we've Uberized talent, right? We have something called as Geek Cloud, where I'm a front-end developer, but there is a program that has back-end development, right? Angular, React, or whatever it is. If I want to learn and potentially use my learning into skilling, I will give them a 10% allocation to that. You can go pick what project that you want to work with. You will have a learning community out there. You can contribute towards a project and you learn hands-on, right? That's the way we pull learning towards any employee. So that kind of excites them. Look, I'm not learning just because I'm aspiring to learn this, but I also learn where I can contribute towards the organization development too, right? So there are multiple facets. I think that answers part of the question that someone had asked in the chat group as well. That's the way you entice people to learn much faster. How do you show them a, for want of better words, again, bait? Tell them, look, you learn, you implement immediately in the gig Uber cloud that we have, one. And as soon as you get done, for you to contribute for that 10% of learning or skilling, I will adequately monetize you as well. This is over and above your compensation. Right? So that's the spiff that we throw out as well. So we also incentivize them differently. You acquire a skill, you acquire more skill allowance and so on and so forth. Right? So you kind of do all of those. Once this is done, we also show them to our client and saying, look, the folks that you're working for, the Scrum team that's working for you right now, they've been elevated in the proficiency, and hence I would want to go $1 more. Maybe like Avneet, I'll come back and say, look, I'm giving you a Scrum team, Avneet, to create this product feature, but these guys come in with 10 years, but additionally double skill coming in, and they will run your entire stack for you, right? So I will demand a higher rate card and pass on that rate card advantage back into the employees. That excites them, right? So it's not just learning, but if I learn, I stay relevant in the industry, I get to implement immediately, and I get compensated adequately because I learn as well. So that excites them to keep the learning quotient going to a large extent.
Some very interesting insights there. You talked about creating persona itself, which is linked with skills. You talked about addressing the major problem of, employee thinking what is in it for him or her. And that could be giving them not only incentivization through gratification, but also showing them how it's linked to their role in the organization. And you also talked very briefly about how this can actually mean ROI for the organization. So from an organization standpoint, how this can sort of link in when you externalize to a customer and, you actually ask for a higher price. So really interesting bites there. In fact, Govind, would love to hear your thoughts when you talked about what are the tenets you think one should think from user perspective or learner perspective in designing these learning experiences. So would love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. I think, as I keep saying, the important word is experience, right? Once they come into your learning ecosystem, so to say, is it a really integrated experience? Do they have to go to different places to get different things, or they're able to do everything in one place, right? Or are they able to do it when they are on Teams, for example, or on Microsoft, any platform of Microsoft, or any platform? So it is important that you're able to integrate your learning into a person. And that's why I said the space of the person, and the point at which they are. If they are onboarding, are we giving them what they need to be successful in their initial projects, right? So all of our focus has clearly been on employee experience as a learner, right? Once they take off, it's like this, right? Once they come into the system, the first few minutes they decide whether they will use it or they will not use it, like in any other system that is available today, right? And are you able to hook them, give them what they want? I think Satish made an important point about taking all their profiles and then giving them paths immediately, so they feel it, right, immediately. Okay, this is great, right? I already have something to kind of look forward to from a learning point of view. So that creates a pull. But it is not. So I see that some people, there are learning allowances given. How do you incentivize people to learn? Different people learn differently. Everybody does not need learn only from these courses or micro learning. They learn on the job. So what we have also started doing is to create what we call scalable developmental experiences, right? They are not really typical learning courses, but they are templates, on the job training tools, and in project assignments outside. So you're trying to help them apply. So the focus today in learning has to be not knowledge based, as I said, but application based, which helps drive performance, right? Or take a new position, whatever it is, right? So our focus again has been to give them these developmental experiences that are different than typical learning courses, whether online or offline. So, once they know that they are able to apply using these resources, I think that gives them a different experiences. What we've seen, and you cannot make everybody learn the way you think, because you have these courses, everybody has to take the course. It doesn't work. What I've seen is some 33% do it on their own, 33% do not do anything at all, but they learn still. They learn on the job. They learn from their peers. Are you able to use technology as a substitute for the peers in the model hybrid world is something that you need to take. And then there is the middle 33% who you can coax and incentivize through certificates, getting them onto the projects. An important aspect, we did some study of people who use our learning systems, whether formal or informal, and we've seen that the attrition rate of people who are learning, right, who are learning, proactively, and 50% less than people who are not learning, right? So that is a very important, that's telling, right, that they are much more engaged, they are much more willing to stay in the organization. So you do everything as a learning organization to help people, give them that experience so they are engaged and learn and move forward.
And also, would you like to talk a bit about how it's linked to the moments of the employee within the employee life cycle? Because that's a very interesting insight I have learned. So would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, there is this Bob Marshall philosophy of 5 moments in need, and you can work it different ways, right? As I said, two moments are, when you come in first, when you onboard, you need to learn something new, because this is an organization where you need to get assimilated, and you need to learn something new. So that happens through knowledge resources, again, the typical traditional knowledge resources. Then there is something that you need to learn more on the job when you're on the job. So that's the second. As you're in the job, you need to kind of skill yourself up. You can call it upskilling, whichever way. So that's another moment in need. But these are knowledge-based. But the key 3 things that we as learning professionals that we need to focus on are the application. So the third one is apply. Once I've got this, am I able to apply it on the job? I think Satish spoke about, opportunities that we are giving people so that, they are ready for something else. And you charge people $1 extra because, they've got that extra bit today. But that does not happen just by knowledge-based learning, but by application-based learning. So you need to be able to help people if they need to go to a new role. Are you able to help them apply the learning? Because otherwise it doesn't work that way. So that's another moment in need that you need to focus on. And we're always changing, right? So if we get them to reskill, if we need them to get reskilled, at that time, are we able to then, help them reskill? That's another important aspect of, moment in it. So, or problem solve, right? That's what I was saying. You typically ask your next person, get into conversation, are you able to replace that with technology, giving them what they need, the resources? That's why I said, scalable developmental resources to problem solve on their own, where they are, and meet them where they are. So these are the moments in need in an organization, 5 moments. But the key focus, I think, is going to be on apply. Otherwise, we will not be able to help business help themselves, right? So the business, if we really intend to help the business, I think we need to help people apply the learning on the job where they are.
No, really great insight. And one very important, being a technology company ourselves, would love to know how technology is key to it. In fact, I have heard very interesting usage of not this, we all know about learning experience platforms now. We know, how personalized learning. In fact, what Satish touched upon is with the persona, you're also taking the context from the learner and then building a persona, and the pathways also personalizing learning to a large extent, which drives the pull-based learning. But something very different that's happening is in terms of how companies are learning from their employees as to how to develop their learning ecosystem, right? And experiences, or for that matter, how are they gratifying in a very unique manner? So Satish, you shared some good insights there, how, in Mphasis, that how you are using technology to sort of drive learning and incentivize. Would love to hear that.
Yeah, I think I alluded to that a little bit in my previous oration, but quickly, right? We use what we call as NFT to a large extent. Again, a lot of jargon. Sorry, pardon me for that. Non-fungible tokens, something similar that we use for what we call as learning coins, for want of better words, right? It's like you fly with any of the airlines, you get the flying miles, right? It gets accumulated. So we create that with learning coins. So the coins get added on to an individual in terms of, I've acquired this specific skill and hence I have so many coins in my bag, right? So that bag gets bloated up beyond a point. And based on that, you get your recognition, reward, and so on and so forth. I guess there was one question also from Nick or someone was on the chat window. How do you make this effective, right? It's all about how do you link this to either, it's just three sides to it, the way that I look at it. And one, it's an individual's aspiration that you need to marry it and say, look, for you to aspire, for you to grow, this is what we can offer. Second, hey, this is what the organization is expecting you to do. That's a second piece. Or third, this is your client environment. You're working in a Scrum team right now or Agile team right now. As a team, this is one skill that that we thought we will build because this is needed to deliver our next sprint, for example, or feature, for example, or story, right? So these are three ways that we can look at, and we use learning coins significantly. We use leader dashboard significantly. These are learner incentivization program that we do, which is very well recognized right now, right? Because every other week, every fortnight, email goes off. There is a interdisciplinary, I would say, I wouldn't want to say competition, but camaraderie that comes up saying, look, this team has done about 24 hours of learning. We are only at 18 hours of learning. Let's complete it. Not just that, taking this 24 hours and reflecting it back into a KPI. Let's say in a Scrum team, for example, someone had asked about behavior, how do you derive it? The only example that I've been taught of and what I also preach to the teams that I work with is about, if you want to run a chariot, all 8 horses should run at the same speed direction, right? Even if one misses the path or one steps out a little, you're derailed. You get much more time, right? So for you to run that as a Scrum team in IT world that we talk about, it is about group behavior, right? Today, the performance measurement system is also moving out from being an individual yearly or half-yearly performance measure to, as a team, are we able to deliver quickly to what the customer is expecting us to deliver? If my sprint is next week, I need to deliver this feature, right? I'll let maybe Avni talk about it when it comes to, because he runs a typical product part, right? I'm able to deliver that or not. Collectively, the 8-9 member Scrum team is responsible for that. So any learning that you do, any skilling that you do, whether it's aspirational capability or whatever you want to call them as, if collectively that's helping a team to perform, that means you have the objective met, right? So the team performs well, individual will also perform well. If he or she performs well, the team performs. So it's either ways, right? That's one thing that somehow we need to enable our teams to realize and understand. I know it's not that we've done this overnight, right? It's a lot of these persona experiment that we've been doing back and forth. We figured this out at one point in time saying this is the secret sauce, right? Get the team together for a specific moonshot, get them towards that. It's not the destination again, it's a journey that you take. We will create the journey and path. We will see how soon you can get there, right? That's where that will work.
Well said. And Anvit, directing the question to you, obviously, that when we talk about, the way the learning is also changing, becoming more peer-to-peer, more collaborative in format, because it's also in the flow of work. And Rapido, as an organization, has a unique challenge. You don't have too much of external benchmarks. There are a lot of things that are going to be something that you work with business to identify what skills also they need to sort of engage with and what is it that they need as a team, right? So how do you marry your learning into this kind of a framework?
No, it's a I mean it's a great learning, because like when I hear Satish having those systems to solve the problem of learning at scale, right? It's a great learning for me as well. Solving the problem at scale. Just I'll touch upon some of the points, and then I'll answer your questions as well. Question as well. Govind mentioned about how people learn different. How they want different ways of learning, right? So in fact, that's the same issue for us as well. But at the same time, what we have noticed is, uh, especially because we're a small company, people create these role models in the company, right? Somebody is solving the problem, and there's always a problem to solve when you're building a product which caters to this kind of scale, right? And they look at some of these guys who are really experts, and they kind of start modeling them. And if we do not give a career path, they eventually move out, right? So and the point that I'm trying to make is, young workforce, they are so keen on learning. For us, actually, that's not the problem, that we need to sell learning to people, but it's about how do we give them career paths? How do we make them solve the problems, right? They learn on the job, they learn on their own, they talk among themselves and learn as well. Now coming back to the question that you were asking, sorry, what was the question?
I was asking that, given that the kind of organization you have, and also as Satish mentioned, the learning way is more collaborative, more more peer to peer. That's the user persona. Now, and third is you don't have any benchmarks, external benchmarks, maybe very limited benchmarks. A lot of it will have to be aligned with internal part. How do you marry all of this to create that experience?
So in fact, actually what we are doing right now is we are building a skill-based organization. That means if there is a product engineer, what all skills should he be possessing as a product engineer? If you are a senior product engineer, what additional skills should you be bringing onto the table? Similarly, a lead product engineer, what additional skills do you bring onto the table? Now we're creating this, and if it is DevOps or backend or front end, we started actually defining these skills. Now, when these skills are defined, and it becomes a lot more easy for us to say that you can become a senior product engineer irrespective of how many years of work experience do you have, but you need to bring this skill to the table. And after that, you need to apply those skills. You get an opportunity to apply those skills. And eventually, when you start delivering, you become a senior product engineer. So they are now employees do, we are educating employees on the skills that are required to move up the ladder as well. So hence, sitting with business to define the skills is the most difficult, because getting the time from business is probably the toughest one, especially in the startup world for us, because they have to solve the customers and the captain's problems, the business problems that they need to solve. At the same time, they need to focus on training people, or even coming up with the skills that have to be done. And one important thing for us, which is working for us, is extremely understanding business unit heads who understand the value of playing the long game rather than playing the short game, right? So they do understand that we need to focus on training people, we need to upskill people, and if you have a great partnership with the business, they will definitely, once you're able to explain that rationale, right, it does really help to get that kind of time and effort from them to having this entire learning programs as well.
Absolutely aligned. I think everyone will agree that it is, most organizations are moving to a skill-based kind of framework, and they're also aligning with business, because obviously to drive the outcomes or derive the outcomes, that's a very critical ask. And I'm sure that's one thing I just wanted as an end point, and then we'll take a couple of questions. What are the one or two points that you have in mind that you'd want the L&D, fraternity to take back? How can they evolve and maybe look at skilling themselves to be prepared to handle this kind of a challenge? Because this is a role of a change agent within an organization. So what are the couple of pointers that you'd want to give? And we'll go around the table, maybe start with Govind, then Satish, and then Anvit, please.
Sure. I think, L&D has to reinvent itself continuously like everybody else. And to do that, if you're a large organization particularly, you need to think of yourself as a marketing department and as an analytics department. Very important, right? To say that these are my products that I have, and and look at analysis beyond how many people have taken, what are the scores and all of that, but target based on analysis the learning that a person based on skills to the people who want those skills. So it's very, very important that and that's what we are doing. We have people who are doing marketing and analytics, and they go together, because based on what you look at as people needing, and a lot of different kinds of analysis you can do, but that then you sell that, and that will create the pull. Somebody was asking, how do you create the pull, right? That's very, very important. Second, in terms of content area, you have to become master curators today. It's not about creation. Content is there everywhere, but how do you curate meaningful learning experiences to people? So that's another important aspect. And third, how do you create experiences that help people apply on the job when they are at the job, right? So while working, how do you then make sure that you provide them with resources that help them apply what they are learning? So I think, these are three areas I think that need to be that one needs to focus on, other than typical, training and administration through LMS, all of these, or e-learning deployment, all of that people do, or instructional design of the old way. Very important that you look, because that's the only way you scale as a learning organization. And lastly, technology. I think you need to look at, what is cool, what is out there, and what works, and make sure that all of these technologies give, however complex they are very simple for the user to use at the end of the day. In one place, they're able to get what they want. They're very integrated, and the other word that you use, seamless. So that's the other thing that, you have to be on top of what tools and technologies can be used for people.
You rightly said that we think it's very complicated. Sometimes there's this big mindset that learners will not adopt. But if you go outside the learning and the organization setup, look at technology and how even the lowest person in the chain is using technology, even if they don't understand the language, right? So I think that's a big sort of a misnomer there, which needs to be broken. Satish, your one or two golden thoughts.
I guess Govind covered most of it from a functional standpoint, right? I would take a step back. If I were to look at it, I guess we moved on from what Govind said earlier, from training to learning to development to now the next era is going to be performance coaching, and I think that's a trajectory that all of our L&D professionals are going through. How can you enable your talent to be curious, creative, and collaborative? Right. If we can sustain these three somehow and enable this to happen and create an environment that would create agility in terms of learning. That's one. Second, as a performance coach, as a learning and development professional, I work with my team as well. The team and I, we've always been thinking, if in an IT, if someone can call themselves a T-shaped IT professional, why not from an HR or a learning part of it? How do you get the breadth and the depth? And I guess I'm just summarizing what Govind just said. It's not just about your functionality of identifying your learner personas or curating a content or delivering it or measuring and all of the stuff. It's also about how is this impacting your organizational capability? How is it impacting the business that you're working for? Is it meeting the moonshot of the organization as a whole? Because quite often, you will have a service offering of say 40, 50 courses. And you will sit and wait. You will push this month on month and say, this is a calendar, come and register yourself and work, but it's just not going to get there anywhere, right? But how do you change that modality? So if you flip that and say, look, in your organization, one of the challenge could be scaling up your revenue. This is where we will come in as a learning development professional or performance coaches and say, look, we will take a stab at it. We will tweak this part from a behavior perspective. We will tweak this part from a functional standpoint, this part around technical standpoint, put all these 3, 4, and the fourth one is domain as well. We will consult on these 4 parameters and let you know how we can enable this to move from point A to point B. That's how you create that performance-oriented culture, right? So for that, learning professionals should have business acumen. They should have micro, macro, economic purview in terms of, if you're in IT industry, you need to know, for someone to stay relevant in IT industry, what should one have? Today, Java could be there, tomorrow it will not be, right? Today, there's got to be an Azure AWS cloud, tomorrow it could be something else, right? That could be an OpenShift coming in. So technology part will change, skills will keep changing every now and then. As long as you have a robust ecosystem and say, I'm a T-shaped professional, whether it's functional, technical, behavioral domain, this is my breadth and depth. Given any scenario, I can adapt and adopt to it. I guess that's where L&D professionals should be looking at, right? In other words, like what Govind said, be agile as a L&D professional yourself too.
Yeah, really nice one on T-shape, because I think, and you said knowing the business acumen to be able to drive, right? And being consultative as well, that you give your domain expertise once you understand the overall landscape. I think very, very relevant point. I'll put that as part of the takeaways. And Anvit, over to you.
Yeah, so I
a couple of questions for the team, which we'll pick it up right after this.
Sure. So completely agree with Satish and Govind as well. Right. As HR professionals, they need to be really, really close to the business. That means they really need to understand business, right? So same thing goes with the learning and development team as well. If they do not understand business, you can't just actually roll out a program and say how many training mandates have we done, how many, what is the feedback on that score. It really doesn't help. See, are you truly adding value to the business? If you are truly adding value to the business, you need to know the business goals, right? And if you know the business goals, only then you can go and now you know the business goals. Now, how does the team even have the capability to deliver those business goals? That needs to be taken into account, and it can't be, you can't run it through a survey, right? You can't do a training need analysis sitting somewhere and trying to come up with programs. They need to sit with the team, understand, if you need to ship this particular product as fast as possible, then do we, as a team, do you have the combined skills? Where can I help you in terms of how can we help you to ship something faster, or to solve the problem of the customer faster? Now, what kind of programs would you require, and who should go through those programs? So that kind of involvement need to be there from the learning professionals. And apart from that, that is completely looking inwards, and at the same time, they need to be extremely looking outwards as well. Whether it is technology, whether it is the kind of learning platforms that are there, or the latest trends that are coming up in the learning space. How can I have a view of that, and how can I start implementing that in my organization? Because some of these things have become old school, right? The kind of metrics, the kind of tools that you use, and so on and so forth. And it's a rapidly changing world. Because people want to learn through apps, they want to learn at their own pace, they want to get mentored from people who are sitting somewhere outside, they want to get coached someone who's probably sitting in some other country, they want to interact with people who are solving similar problems that you are solving in the company. Now, how can you enable that part, that outlook L&D team really need to have, both inwards and outwards?
No, so true. Thank you so much. You wanted to say something, Satish?
So I'm going to stay on with what Arvind just said, right? It's about the mind shift rather than the change that you're talking about. It's a paradigm shift. Govind alluded to this is much earlier as well, right? From a business context standpoint, right? At least the industry that I hail from, and also Arvind to a large extent, we moved on from buy to build. That's a big transformation from a business standpoint, right? We've also moved on from a job to a career. That's what we've started attracting talent by saying, we don't give a job, but we build career for you, right? We've definitely moved on from prescribing something to be done to to what I spoke to about empowered and personalization part of it as well, right? That's from a business standpoint. But from an L&D standpoint, definitely agree with what Arvind said. We need to move out of this mindset of consumption-based measurement of L&D to impact-based measurement, right? So when you start looking at outcome, how has this program impacted the individual towards his or her job is something that we need to look at, right? How do we move from a classroom or e-learning? There was one question around it also, to how immersive, how have I created in the flow of the job without disrupting. In today's context, every hour is billability, right? Without disrupting the revenue generation part of it. How do you do it with the flow of the job is another part. Moving out from creation, off-the-shelf content to curation, what is needed based on persona, right? These are 3-4 things that we should look at, and also moving in very, very important that I don't want to articulate here is testing someone post every learning or training, moving out of that and saying, I will do credentialing of yours. I want to do credentialing of your skill. It's not about whether you score 80, 90 after a e-learning module, but have you taken this learning and implemented in your work life, and that has impacted something or somewhere or some program or whatever it is. That's credentialization for me, right? So I don't care whether you score 50, 60, 70, 80 in the test just after a training program, but if you've taken 1 or 2 facets of your learning, put them on the job, showcase that look, this learning helped me perform better, I guess that then the job is done for me, right?
Thanks for summing it up. I think you took everyone's point and really did my job easy in terms of summing up. And the last point that you made is absolutely relevant. How do you translate learning into action? And, that's something which should be part of the whole DNA of the learning ecosystem, right? So I think that's a great point. I'll just quickly delve into a couple of questions. One is for Satish. How would you define stability during transformation when our business ecosystem is dynamic/unpredictable?
Yeah, I did respond to that as well. So it's about how do you create a mid path. Honestly, I don't have a silver bullet, right? It's always a moving trajectory. The churn that you have, 15, 16, 17%, or whatever churn that you're going to have in the organization, there are people coming in and moving out. But like I said, as long as you're able to manage as a function, say, I will deliver to aspirational learning, and I also have an ecosystem to kind of build my next gen talent, right? I'd be able to kind of build future ready talent and to be able to deliver here and now as well, right? Net, in the era that we are in, I think Anvit spoke about it. How do I skill to bill here and now, right? Skilling to billing is the mantra right now, right? If stability is something that I want to put in, well, I need to have both the sides managed similarly. I have an engine to do skilling and billing quickly, and I have an engine that will build organizational capability as well. If you can get there to a large portion of it, you might not be 100%, even 60, 70%. I think that's stability, quote unquote, for me, rather than not knowing what's going to happen. If I don't even know what's the skill forecast of my business in the next 1-2 quarters, then it's tough. If I don't even know my baselining of skilling today whilst I'm talking, but I keep pushing a lot of programs back one after the other, then it just doesn't make sense. So if you're able to manage these two, I think that's where we are. That's stability.
Thanks a lot, Satish. And this
on
is
that
for
point, I just wanted to add, I think Satish spoke about 60%, 70%. I think there's always this tendency to go for perfection, right? Like 100%, always, right? I think replace perfection with excellence. Then, you will do well, because nothing will ever be perfect in the world, with the changing world, moreover, right? So always think about excelling, whether you're giving, excellent support to the business, excellent experience to the, under the constraints that you have as an L&D professional, right? So if you try to please everybody, you're going to please nobody at the end of the day. And that's where, we struggle always saying that, we'll go for perfection, get everything done for get pull for everybody, get everybody to do e-learning, get everybody. It doesn't work. Never attempt that, because it just doesn't work, right? If you're able to get from 30% to 50% to 80% and excel in that, I think that's a great job done in whatever way. I think that's very important to keep in mind.
So actually we are on the dot. In fact, we've exceeded time. I was thinking 40-45 minutes, but really engaging conversations. And thank you for also aligning the thoughts. What I think, just to sort of give an overview, and please add if I have missed something, is being very clear about what stage you are in terms of your organization, at the same time also keeping that lens that what are you building versus what are you buying, right? That mix has to be, and building engines for both, so that you are able to quickly maneuver whichever engine you need to drive basis how the growth trajectory is. As somebody mentioned, it's very dynamic, so should be your frameworks. And in terms of experiences, I think the lens towards putting learner in the center of this entire ecosystem, putting him in the driving seat, giving all the ecosystem resources, etc., and also marrying it with the different stage they are in the life cycle within the organization, so that it remains relevant from the time they enter to the time they are in a steady stage and performing. And that's where performance coaching came into play, that how that's also critical, because you have to align with their goals and show them what's in it for them in this entire life cycle. And at the last phase, what Satish said, that also keeping the overview of the organization goals, right? How are you marrying these two to be able to demonstrate? And then will come in technologies there. I mean, I think it's just about knowing what to use where to make it integrated and seamless, whether it's personalization, whether curation, whether it is about immersive experience, blended experience. Technology is there. It's just about how the framework has been set in and integrating it with that. But thank you so much. I think really, really insightful. I've learned a lot myself, and I'm hoping that our lovely audience has also found this engaging. Thank you so much for your time.